Welcome. I know how eager you all are for us to have stories, but I'm still waiting on Kills to show up. It was an exciting weekend. I spent the last several days, let's see, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with Ethers at BaseCon, and we posted one of the videos from that weekend. You see, Ethers are aka Hans, helping me with class, teaching you about alt history, and I'm realizing we're going to do tonight what Kill Tonight kind of planned to do last week, but we never got there because we ended up talking about the atomic bomb. This is all going to be topical, and it's all going to make absolute sense. We promise. Then I'm going to play the intro video because Kiltz isn't here yet anyway, and you'll also get me back in a minute. Welcome to the Mosaic Ark. Yeah, it's still me. So vampires sometimes have they need waking up, and since she's on all the way on the other side of the world, I'm there's only so much I can do. So, well, how was BaseCon? A shout out to Rob Crozy for putting together yet another wonderful panel. We had, as you'll see from the video this year, we were no longer at Ren Fair, which I was actually a little sad about because I like doing my, juggling act on no, I don't juggle, but it was a really wonderful weekend, and the nicest thing about it, which those who tried to worry about it, as seen in PC News or whichever one of those magazines got a little excited about the idea that we were going to have a dangerous BaseCon, it was all completely positive. Now we did do, and this is to a certain degree topical for tonight's storytelling. We did do some panels and one plenary, as it were, on being canceled. And what we would like to share with you tonight is a cautionary tale about what not to do when you're canceled. But for the most part, I'm sure you will be shocked and horrified to hear BaseCon is about how to tell stories, how to tell good stories. And I was on several panels. I was on panel on graphic novels or illustrated stories and comic books, technically, right? We call them graphic novels. It gets all fancy and hoity-toity, but in fact, it's storytelling with pictures. I was also on the panel about being canceled, which we can talk about, on a panel about superheroes and the supernatural and how to include those stories. Oh, right, and a panel on Kickstarter, doing Kickstarters, which, as aficionados of the Mosaic Ark will know, is, we ran our first successful Kickstarter. We're still working on figuring out how to do the layout and the design for Act 1 with Draco Chemicus, because it's a bit more challenging than simply laying out centrism games or writing Christian poetry was. Colleen, formerly Hand Drawn Bear, had some expert help from her artist community, and we are now having to go solo on this and learn how to do it. But we promise, Draco Chemicus Act 1 is drawn, written, and in production, and we will be bringing you new updates soon about exactly when to expect the actual volume. We do have, and I did do, a rousing trade at BaseCon in hard copies of both Aurora Borealis and Writing Christian Poetry. And I noticed from Hans's BaseCon book sale scorecard, we sold some copies of Centrism Games too. So we're building the poetry community out there. Yeah. So, and we've been working on this. This is your news update from me, right? The Talking Head news update. We're working on a variety of things to help people think about what it means to be writing poetry, and also why to read our books. We have a pitch that we've been developing for Aurora Borealis that we think is perhaps a little less cryptic than our usual setup, and we're going to be, over the next few months, hopefully putting together some sort of study guides. We've gotten feedback from people for our Aurora Borealis promotional work, saying, having study guides makes it feel like in school. But on the other hand, some other people find having the study guides somewhat more comforting, because it suggests, sort of ways into the story, which is obviously what we're all about here in our sailing with you. So there's that. But I'm happy, I'm happy to report that, copies of Aurora Borealis were flying off the book sale table, as were copies of Writing Christian Poetry, which we should probably do a proper episode on now that the book is actually out. And if those of you who are in it, my students, should be getting your author copy soon, and you can buy it now already in hardcover off of Amazon, also ebook. Right. So I suppose I could sit here and take any questions. We've got several of you watching in unauthorized, and I'd be happy to take questions, or I can just leap in on the story that we were going to be telling, and no, I'd rather wait for Kilts to show up. So let's do some questions. Does anybody have further detailed questions, things you'd like me to talk about? I can also check in Telegram and see what people are up to there. Get in here at story time. Well, we have Mel saying aloha. Oh, and now I am no longer alone. Thank goodness. Are you ready to come on, my dear? Okay, you're on. Okay, so I was just giving them. I always feel so much better when you're here. I do not. Thank you. I am dreading. No, it's like poor Hans, right? When I can't do lectures by myself anymore at BaseCon, I'm just like, Hans, you have to help me, because I ain't doing this on my own anymore. It's too much fun having the dialogue, right?
Oh, I love it. I'm all sorry. Of those I apologize for being late. Sorry, class.
This is decades of training, right? I have to start class on time. I'm constitutionally incapable of not starting on time. But this, I'm going to be back in the classroom in 2 weeks or so, and it's a heavy thing to do all by yourself, right? Although then I actually have like a room full of people, so I get to talk to them.
There's no void.
there's no talking into the void, right? And yes, and for all of those who worry that this is the Rachel is just full of herself as professor and wants to talk all the time. You recognize how I am no good without my co-host. So here you go.
No, you okay, that makes me happy.
You're necessary. Get in here.
my light's doing some strange things.
This so I'm actually in dark and you're in daytime, but you know, the light, the faux light in our studio set is reversed. You look fine though. It's fine.
No, because it was all happening. Yeah, we missed you. Why did you? You've gone away on an adventure to BaseCon, and I had FOMO. I'm not gonna lie, I had FOMO. Although Hans was amazing. So, you know, we love our ethers are. I was very happy to see him up there after having survived his cancelled cancelled crusade. Yeah.
I thought we'd talk about being cancelled and what not to do tonight. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
But what were you saying? You had FOMO? What?
Oh, FOMO, fear of missing out.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Seeing me with Hans instead of you.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yes. Well, and he and I were actually in the same room.
I know. You have no idea how amazing it is that you're all in the same continent even. It's like I'm constantly looking up at everybody from down here, kind of going, hi.
Please, I want to. Well, so we're just doing meta right now. It's like what I like about watching our videos together is it does feel like we're actually in the same place, which I suppose we are in the sense that we're both here in the internet. Yes. And that we, the girls, have worked so hard in our tech that it's actually, according to one of our commentators on my video with Hans, our ordinary tech here in the Mosaic Ark is better than the professional tech that we had set up for BaseCon, which actually had like multiple mics and everything. So it was somewhat bigger deal than what we can pull off. But I think, yeah, we didn't have the lights, we didn't have the camera focused correctly. We're doing better here.
Girl tech for the win.
Girl tech for the win.
Well, I think it was great, but I know that you had you had an admirer that was not happy with the lack of RFB in the middle of the frame.
I could have stood up and just put myself in front of the camera like one of the guys did. He showed his chops, right? He like just stood in front of where they had the camera set up on a little dolly or something, right? And he just stood right in front of it. But you know, I wanted Hans to have some camera time too, so there you go.
Yes. What are we talking about today?
Well, so I am, as may have come out in the chatter, the between panel chatter at BaseCon, which actually got caught on the mic. So if you watch a little bit of the whole thing, you'll notice that there were things that I wasn't saying yet about alt history that I'm obviously sufficiently nervous about that I will say in other contexts, and then realize it's soon this is going to be the talk of the internet, and you know, the cancellations are going to, I hope not us, right? But cancellations are on everybody's mind. A lot.
Yes.
I'll do some more intro. So we had one of the plenary speakers. I say plenary in the sense that, you know, there were three of us and you got like your own slot as opposed to a panel with lots of discussion with fellow conference attendees. We had one of the plenaries on Blaine Pardo being canceled by his publisher for being harassed, which was very puzzling. He's explaining how, you know, this one person in the guise of a completely different person. It's like the mask that what this stalker was wearing was of a young woman, apparently lesbian and a nurse. And it turns out that the person sending out the emails and the harassment and building it up so that his publisher got really nervous was, in fact, more like a 40-year-old man pretending to be a 30.
And what a weird old.
And it was just like, we're all just sitting there as he's telling this horror story of, you know, being stalked and canceled and stuff for nothing that he did by a person who was clearly, you know, simply getting attention. One worries. One does worry about the way the world of the internet, the demons of the light waves play out. And then he was the one who actually stood properly in front of the camera. So if you watch his video, he's in frame. But we also had a whole panel on being canceled, and Hans in other contexts had talked about how he had his Kickstarter for his Wise at Heart and then was canceled, and then it went back up on Fund My Comic. I hope that's the right platform.
Yeah, I think it was Fund My Comic. Yeah.
And came back on. But then we had yet another panel. I mean, we are based con, so, you know, and Rob, who was organized it, had to talk about how when the internets found out that John Carmack was going to appear, although John didn't get to show up in person because the planes canceled him. he never got out of Texas to show up in person, so he had to do his on a Zoom call. But when the internets got wind of Carmack's coming, started creating tweets and concern and saying, you know, what are they going to talk about at BasedCon? It must be terrifying. There was a lot of gaming. There was a lot of snacks, storytelling about urban fantasy. I don't know. I mean, you know,
terrifying snacks.
The snacks were Hans tweeted a picture out of, you know, the aftermath of the snacks. Yeah, that was a lot of that. Travis Corcoran told stories about being canceled for tweeting one or two things and having police show up on his doorstep. And, you know, pro tip, if the police show up on your doorstep, spend as long as you have to saying, I'm not talking to my lawyer shows up. This was useful in Massachusetts, apparently. And as the panel is going down the line, we're coming to me. I think I was third or fourth in this particular sequence, and I was saying, what shall I say? which of my many stories of being canceled and
harassed and trolled and
tweeted at, which shall I include? There are so many.
You should just go by or play cancel bingo.
Well, so it's been going on a while.
Potential cancellation.
Right. You know, my alt story starting in 2015 with 3 Cheers for White Men, which got some people's attention in 2016, and then becoming friends with Milo and blogging about him, and then still blogging about him and being canceled when he was canceled, and then and that's just the first episode. Right.
That was season 1.
That was season 1. Okay, so season 1 of cancel culture was pushing back against those who would say, hey, hey, ho, ho, Western Civ has got to go. Which in 2015 was still being, you know, the sort of white was new on the horizon as a way to describe European culture. It's taken on other colors since then. We know, right? So my 3 Cheers for White Men at that point was simply saying, you know, there are good things about Western civilization that particularly women are ought to be thankful for, like, you know, the courteous chivalric way in which men behave towards, which I will, you know, report, you know, the guys at BaseCon are very chivalrous. They keep inviting me back. Rob calls me Mother Superior of the group, right? And I'm like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I think it's a good thing.
It's cute.
Okay, so that was, you know, that was prelude, right, to season 1, which was, well, one defensive that men behave well towards women, That was part one. And then part two of 2016 was whether or not there's such a thing as academic freedom, and whether or not we need trigger warnings and safe spaces, and which, the University of Chicago was saying that they didn't. And then there was the Dangerous Faggot tour. And then there was writing in Breitbart. And then there was the same person who got upset with Three Cheers for White Men talking about how I was now a fascist because I had written in Breitbart. This sounds so quaint. It's so long ago. I was a fascist because I said, Milo said positive, happy things about being Christian and having families and not killing your babies. This is all pre-Dobbs v. Jackson, you realize? So it's like, I mean, but were people in our audience even born at this time? It's so long ago now. Well, maybe some, I don't know. Some of the babies that moms are listening to.
The internet generations are slightly smaller than the normal ones.
Well, indeed. Well, I mean, I keep meeting people now. I mean, it's like my undergraduates now who are, first and second years were in middle school when all of this was happening. It's not even current events as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, it's an archaeological dig to the internet cycle. I'm laughing because I had no idea any of this was going on around that era. You're going through this intense cancellation period. And I just wander in 2019 like, oh, hello, what's happening here?
I still have to catch you up. I mean, you don't even have my backstory. My goodness, you're season 3, I think. Or no, wait.
If that.
Okay, so well, it's like I'm not sure do we do it by year or by academic year? That's an issue, because then 2017 came, and if everyone remembers about 2017, that was Charlottesville. I mean, this is all like pre-January 6th.
Oh yeah,
right.
Tiki Torch, gotcha.
This was when Richard Spencer was still a boogeyman. Anybody even remember who he is? He shows up in E. Michael Jones's cozy live stream Friday thing, but when E. Michael Jones is talking about Richard Spencer, he's talking about how stupid Richard Spencer is.
Yeah, because he is.
So handing out spears to the white boys and saying "charge the machine gun nest," right? And they have Spencer going, "Dr. Jones, sorry," It's like. It's so long ago. It's so long ago. So there was the march in Charlottesville where they started off in the Robert E. Lee statue, which I'm not even sure is there anymore. I totally lost track of what even exists. And then...
So this was during was it the summer where they were just pulling statues down left, right, and center in America? This is the era.
I think so. No? Yes. And so, and they were, I mean, we know, I mean, again, 2017 is so long ago. We are now fully aware of the fact that these complicated rallies tend to have government help. I mean, the police are there to, sort of crowd control and such, but sometimes there's guys inside the marches. In matching outfits, would that
be a feature at all?
I don't know.
I'm just having a guess here. Like,
I think in some context it says they glow in the dark. Maybe it's because they're wearing those light bands, right? You break them and they go rainbows when you wear them around your neck or something. Glowies, I think those are called. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they want to rave. Yeah. They want to go to the rave.
Yeah, we want to be in the rave, and so they're there helping out, raving. And the same colleague who was really upset with my writing for Breitbart did a post talking about how to prove a blog post, right? This is very important. Blog posts is happening on blog posts still, because blogs were still a thing. Are blogs even a thing anymore? I mean, it was kind of old-fashioned even in 2017.
It's survival of the fittest in the blog world.
It always was. Anyway, that she did a blog post warning those of us who teach in my field in medieval studies that when we went into the classroom after this event, and did not explicitly say we were not white supremacists, our students would assume we were. Like, silence meant, like, don't come in and announce, I am not a white supremacist. Your students will assume that you are, because you're teaching medieval European history. Because some of the guys at Charlottesville used very modern symbols. And therefore, those of us who teach medieval studies need to make sure to not be modern. Oh, wait, no.
Did I have their chronologies mixed up?
So the talk I gave on Sunday on alt history, it's like, you never know when you're in a time travel story. You could be.
Yeah. It sounds like they've got a bit of a confusion over which era you medievalists are representing.
Well, apparently Vikings, who I'm pretty sure in their imagination are pagans, because these are pre-Christian Vikings, aren't crusaders because they're pagans. So but somehow white means pagan and Christian and atheist and both medieval and modern, and it's a bit of a grab bag. It sounds like, yeah, okay.
It sounds like the IKEA of identities. Everything's just kind of thrown together in a room. We'll say that's white. What is that? Oh, that's our white room. What's in there? Some medieval stuff, some modern stuff. There's a few pagans, some Christians.
It's a real jumble room of symbolism and artifacts. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything that doesn't fit in this category, because it seems to include everything.
Yeah. It is. It's phenomenally like IKEA. You can just bring anything in, and it's part of the furniture now. Doesn't matter if it fits or not. It's in the catalog. It has to fit. We'll make it fit.
Well, this made it a bit difficult for me. This is back in 2017, you realize. It's like, this is going to be, we're going to tease you yet again and never tell you about Theophilus. We promise. No. So I did the blog post called "How to Signal You Are Not a White Supremacist," because I thought, it was important to signal that I was not a white supremacist.
Yes.
And did
it work?
No. It got me a lot of tweets, and I went and talked to the police just in case. Yeah, and some guys, if you haven't followed my Fancy Barrett Prayer archive on Medieval Gate, you're in for a ride, right? So there was a lot of tweets out there. I didn't find them until the May or so of 2018, because I didn't know how to search Twitter. Didn't. I barely was on Twitter, right? I think I was by then technically on it, because one of my friends had insisted I should be, but I wasn't really tweeting, and I had no clue how to search. And apparently there were things said. What I had said was, I work on Our Lady, and you and I have talked about this a lot, right? And it's like one of her central features liturgically is to be addressed as Black but beautiful, Song of Songs 1-4. And that there's this mysterious reality that there are all these statues of Mary, particularly from southern France, that are Black on purpose, which seems to have a kind of mystical, or both liturgical and mystical significance. This apparently wasn't sufficient to prove that I wasn't all about white supremacy, or at least according to the 1,500 people who signed the petition against me, when Milo's team did a little write-up about. Well, no, it got complicated. He wrote it all out in Middle Ages. You can read it there.
Yes. Recommended reading.
Right, the deep backstory on part one. I think that kind of that this particular element of the story played out by 2018 when we did Middle Ages, and it's like the academic thing. I feel like I'm missing steps. There's something else that's going to come along. I don't. What happened in 2019? Oh, I guess you and I met virtually. Oh, but that was the great cancel when Milo got kicked off of Facebook and everything. So we all ended up on Telegram. Again, not a place I'd known about before all of this. We show up in Telegram, and Milo has his. There's Fencing Bear posts about this called the Telegram Diaries. That was summer 2019 was a fun summer for sure. Yes. Finding ourselves in all these little chats and then getting canceled in those chats by yeah.
You can't help yourself.
Moo. This was the event when Kiltz and I first truly became acquainted, when Milo kicked all the women out of his chat on Tuesdays, and we made a bit of an event of it.
Yeah.
And then got some of the other women mad at us for trying to plot about how to return dramatically. And the guys were talking about cows, and so we came back going moo until they talked to us. And apparently some people thought this was a really mean thing to do. Murr. Murr.
Yeah, people don't have a sense of humor. It's very strange. It's strange what will set people off.
It is very much so.
It's curious to me that we were in a trolling academy, essentially. It's this massive, wonderful rave of madness. People were getting angry about us mooing. So yeah, we got to know each other in a very strange environment, really.
Yes, this is the longer version. Remember back in the marathon in June when Patrick asked, "How'd you all meet?" Murr, murr.
Yeah.
There is
making cow noise.
There is a blog post about this called "The Game of Moo." If you ever want backstory on that, I've archived. This is actually the meta lesson of all of this. Very important to keep a lot of records about everything, because A, people will not remember. And B, if you don't have a lot of records about what happened, that leaves other people the ability to make up stories about what you said. Class, this is really important. I know it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, but it really, really is. Because this was okay, so then I kept getting then I wrote a lot about Milo's chat in about that, not even a full year before I got kicked out of his chat completely. Even though I'd been literally the first person in it after he set it up, which I have screenshots to prove. And it got quite fraught, and you and I, we became friends in the midst of some of this cancellation and thinking about, this is a sort of meta level of why was everyone so caught up and upset. And of course, some of it was, we were in contact with him. So it was fraught because people wanted Milo's attention, and feeling of privilege and authority and power because of his admin assignments, which were always hilarious. And you and I were in an admin chat at one point. There's way more backstory here than even I wrote out. And no, I'm not going to write it out now. The poetry comes out of this. Yes. He was asking for explanation of why things were so vicious at some point. And I was trying to say, it's you.
Bluntly,
this will be why he calls me mom. And you personally, Kiltz, quite wisely recognized that the thing to do in this situation was refuse. Just like, I don't want this power. I leave. And we were talking about Conch's, and he's like, that's easy. Refuse the Conch. And she left. This very privileged back channel, high level admin secret, power hungry. No, wait, she just left.
It's like becoming a 33-degree Freemason or something, and then just going, all right, I'm leaving now. This is fun, but fuck it. Excuse me, but I was bored because it was. You see the dynamics between everyone getting so vicious. I was like, I'm wasting my life force here. I was here for fun. Where is the jokes? Where is the funniness gone? And it disappears as soon as the status seeking starts to infect everybody.
Yeah.
I thought, hold on. This is just like for my own chronology of how I tumbled in and found you, but a lot of people have asked me like, oh, how did you find the professor, and how did you find out about Milo? I had no idea who Milo was. I saw a poster of Milo in the city somewhere in Australia, and I thought he was just a Greek singer that was coming in from Athens, because neighborhoods where I grew up in, right? It's like a normal thing you see to some random Greek guy, and you're like, oh yeah, he's coming in to do a show. So I thought he was a Greek pop star. And then completely ignored that until later on I saw it again. I was like, oh, is that? Oh, okay, this is what's going on. So yeah, the interest was sparked because I thought, oh yeah, this guy, he's up to some stuff. It's fun, but the whole like mood of everything had turned too serious. I was like, why? Which got you and I talking about why everyone had kind of fallen into the cancel thirst that everyone's fallen into, because it was kind of replicated in these chat environments. I hate her, we've got to kick her out, got to do this. It's like this mechanism of why everyone gets cancelled out in the real world via the internet was really very well demonstrated in that.
Yes.
So
in this little microcosm of the people in this one chat who were, I did some posts about the rules of the game and things like that, and it would, to a certain extent, it was like a giant. Started this off of BaseCon, right? It was like a giant game, and I was interested that I got so emotionally caught up in all of it, because of course I like Milo's attention too. Who doesn't, right? Well, actually, maybe not everybody. This could be why we were in Telegram and not, for example, on Facebook anymore, right? Because and
some people didn't like it.
A number of people have had Milo's attention over the last year, and have, may or may not be happy to hear his name. So there'd been factions, and I mean, one of the things that got super explosive was that there had been somebody who had come in under an alt, and this is like this, so we're going to blow this all up into the real world problem, right? There's been someone who'd come under an alt who people started assuming was Milo, or talking about Milo as if Milo had an alt, and then half the chat all believed that it really was Milo, and though it wasn't, and it was astonishing the degree to which you thought you could tell who was playing the themselves and who was pretending and who was, and it was impossible. Right, it just got infinitely fraught, all around trying to get his attention, which was the prize in this situation, and incredibly, I mean, it was remarkably vicious. And I did another blog post about that called Judgment Day, where I got really mad and then I got banned. I mean, this seems like it was so fraught, and this was like 2020, right? It's before COVID hit, right? All I did was post this Bitmoji, which you all know now because I use them to advertise these streams. I love Bitmoji. I think it's cool. I like seeing myself in my pretty little cartoon, right? But I did one where she's my cartoon avatar is like in flames and angry, and I stop being this way, and Milo kicked me out. I'm banned from his chat right now, right? Because it's talking about canceled. I did not bring this up at BaseCon. I don't actually have any sense of a scorecard. How many times have I been kicked out of Milo's Telegram chat? Milo would probably say, "Not enough, Mom. Why are you even in there? Don't waste your time. Get back out there in the real world and write stuff about Mary." And I'm like, well, I've been canceled for that too.
Yeah.
Actually, quite seriously canceled for that because,
yeah.
Carry on. We have a werebear. If you can bear to hear the truth, you've spoken twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools. But I think that feels like there's a... Okay, and Mel saying Middle Rages is such a must read and it's tiny. There's no excuse. Quickest read. Yes.
Oh, well, this was during the era where I was a man too. So
that's
that made
true.
it doubly funny.
Yeah. Although, I mean, the women in the chat should have known that you were a woman because you had the women's chat, which is where the moo happened.
Yeah. But it still didn't.
It didn't convince people that you were a woman.
I was literally running an all-female chat room. Still, everyone thought I was.
Yeah.
No, the mechanics of this environment was really interesting. It was like a gamified version of seeing what was going on in the culture.
Yes.
Which was very useful to participate in because as I've said on the stream, as you know, I left the West. I came back into the West. I had a reverse culture shock, which was, well, I mean, arguably I'm still in the middle of, because I came back into the West when everyone started to have this massive cultural stroke, or whatever you can call it, in the Obama era, and so I walked back into it very similarly to you, and I think this is why when we were chatting, we were vibing with each other so well, because I said, hold on, I've walked into a completely different civilization. What? And everything I was talking about no longer had any resonance with anybody because they'd moved into a different different era of thought. So which I'd left during that transition period. So I came back in and I just didn't understand the rules anymore. So I was annoying everyone around me because the cultural conversation was getting closer and closer to what it's become.
Yeah.
And I'd arrived in the West, with my little African hat on, saying, "What are you all doing? What's going on here?" And speaking freely and thinking thinking I could do that without getting people upset. Right. And I found it very difficult to navigate because I thought, hold on a second, this is like a first world country. You guys don't have to worry about malaria every day, which I did for a while. And there's no cholera outbreaks here, and you don't have to deal with African traffic conditions. Why are you also angry? What's going on here? So the chat dynamic really made me sit down, study what had been going on and what I'd been missing, and then begin to understand the dynamics of what was happening in the culture around me, because it seemed like a foreign country, the one that I returned to. And so as we were talking, even you who had gone through that process of blogging, getting cancelled, having your own academic colleagues, write petitions against you, being harassed online for your positions, having the overt support of your friend Milo, like he wrote a book about you,
right.
Even with all of this, within that chat room, it was like no one was safe. There was no recognition that people were talking to you. They were talking to a frontline culture warrior. I mean, you were in the middle of something phenomenally important for everyone else, and it was sort of like, oh, okay, I'm not looking at a bunch of people that want to understand their own civilization. We're looking at something else. What are we looking at?
That I still don't. I don't know. Right. I haven't,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I haven't been a regular participant in it in 3 years. So I don't know.
Mm.
And that was when I, I got kicked out because that's what happens. We started Dragon Common Room, and then we started writing the poetry, and it's like we've
Yeah.
obviously been absorbed in saying, okay, so you want culture? We're about culture. We're about praise and worship and storytelling, and I don't, the sort of culture war stuff of where you're sitting around hand wringing and worrying that there isn't any good stuff. It's like, that's your problem. We make some.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
to, to continue to the theme of BasedCon, that is what's lovely about the people that are there. I mean, when Hans invited me to
Yes.
speak there, this is number 3, and the first one I did was in 2021. They invited me because of the Tolkien things that the Tolkien videos that I've done on unauthorized in my course and stuff, and it was just great because they talked about positive stuff like how to do your own Kickstarter, which we now learned how to
Yes.
do. Thinking about different genre questions, the problems of writers group and crafting stories and style, and it was all as Rob wanted it to be, very much about this is the writers coming together, practicing their craft, and most of the people there are writing at some level, whether they're beginners or 27 volumes in their publications. And so it was it was the feeling of what we've lost in a positive sense of
Mm.
like this, what we could be doing now. Although great stories are usually war stories, right? Of some sort, right? I hunting stories, right? I went and I fought the beast. I'm going to be teaching Beowulf in a few weeks, right? And Beowulf boasts about, we swam and I fought the sea monsters and I killed Grendel and I killed his mom, and like, well, he doesn't get to brag about killing the dragon because he dies immediately after that. But
Mhm.
that we storytelling does seem to thrive on conflict. So
Mhm.
fair, right? But there, to get to the point where your culture is well, I suppose, no, it's like I'm babbling a bit now, but it's like, to what degree is culture defined by war
Mm.
and conflict?
It's a good question.
Because
Well,
there's
Shakespeare's.
certain things we're not allowed to talk about.
Uh-huh.
We talked about a little bit
No,
last week about the
quite a few
atomic bomb,
things.
right?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
We'll just do a little
Impu-
foreshadowing
im-
there, right? Okay, and then COVID came, right? And I mean, it's
yes.
it's funny to think that all of this stuff about getting banned out of Milo's chat and everything was happening in February 2020, and by March 2020, the world was different. Like a month
Mm-hmm.
later,
Yeah.
we were shut down. Talk about the whole world was canceled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Australia entered the Dark Ages. 2 years of ongoing madness, which I'm grateful we wrote our way through. We wrote our way through that. But
Yeah,
that
so
was yeah the whole.
now the chronology includes kilts, and we write Centrism Games in 2020, Aurora
Mm,
Borealis in 2021. We started working on the first part of Draco Alchemicus in 2022, which is now going to have, it's a serial, so it's going to take us a while, right? We're working,
mm,
we're a third of the way into writing Act 2, we promise. And this was our response to, it's like the world is canceled. Okay, let's meet and create. It's like everyone in the Catholic world knows Rod Dreher, talking about his Benedict option. Well, we made a little monastery and met online to write verse.
mm. Yeah, we were well, you were disciplined.
I
I
started
was
on
learning to
time
follow
tonight.
orders.
Whatever these vampires do when they have to wake up and rub the dust out of their eyes.
Look, it's 7 hours past my bedtime.
There is
um,
no time in
the,
the internet. Come on. We live in
No,
the
it's
net
true.
of the light beams that are encircling the world.
It's the light beams without the sun. The perfect environment for vampires to be working in. Yeah, I mean, that was it. February 2020, and then the world got cancelled, and then everyone started cancelling everyone else, and suddenly we felt, well, I felt like very much like we were back in Telegram chats because,
Yeah.
So in that way, we were well prepared.
We've been practicing being canceled a lot.
Yeah.
It's brutal being canceled, off the Telegram chat. It's like 1 minute you're talking, and the next you can't even see it.
You're gone. I just don't understand. Yeah, I mean now I do, obviously. The COVID Conch, the great Conch that was COVID.
Yep.
It was exploding everywhere. We had to channel that into an artistic work somehow to kind of make sense of it. I think that what we've been able to do now with Draco Alchemicus is see exactly how that dynamic affected everyone in their participation in the mandates and everything that was going on in 2020, 2021.
Right.
And that the fear of being cancelled is real. It's a real fear.
Oh yeah.
And it's not disappearing. It's getting worse. The mandates disappeared, but the effect of them never went anywhere. And I've found, at least in Australia, there seems to be this lingering resentment that's not being resolved. People are becoming more and more petty, and they're getting a sense of resolution from more conch games, micro conch
games, yeah. So maybe should remind everyone what the conch is. Maybe those of you who are illiterate and didn't read it in school.
Lord of the Flies.
Did you read it Did you read it in school, or do you know it from?
I don't remember what I read in school, to be honest. That whole period of life is a bit
fair. We read it in school, and
it's a lot of partying.
I think we read it. I remember reading it maybe senior year because, or no. Some of my friends went around. It's like in the story they end up sacrificing a pig effectively, and they stick the pig's head on a stick. And some of my friends in high school went to our English teacher. I didn't. I was involved in some of these activities of toilet papering house. Can you imagine toilet papering a whole house? Remember what happened in 2020 when there wasn't any toilet paper? This is Texas in the 80s. You decorate the trees with toilet paper. Anyway, oh yes, and one of our other favorite activities was rearranging the letters on signs. Yeah, that was our rebellion, right? That some of my classmates went to our English teacher's house, or so they said, and stuck Vienna sausages on toothpicks in its yard because it was pigs on sticks. Okay, it was dumb.
Tiny pigs.
Tiny pigs. Anyway, and the conch is.
Oh well, they're all arguing over it because the conch gives them the power to lead the little mob of feral children.
Boys. It's all boys. Yeah.
Yes. They go feral, and so they're fighting each other over the conch. They want to kill for this conch.
And they're trapped on an island, and the metaphor being in the midst of World War II. Well, of course, it's a metaphor for what the grown-ups are doing in their war. Fighting over this conch, right? It's like they use it initially to say whoever has the conch can speak, and then they end up indeed fighting over it. Yeah.
Yes, so that speech influence over everyone, which goes back to the Sauron's mic that you were talking about last season. and that, you know, whoever has to speak, whoever has the conch gets the power to speak, and of course, whoever's speaking, everyone else has to listen to them.
Or wait their
So,
turn.
yeah. Well, that just sort of interrupted all the fun for me, so I wasn't having any of it.
You are all,
Yeah.
come on, guys. Why do you think I dragged her into the internet on camera and everything? She's way too much fun to talk to just in text. I needed her, you know,
Yeah. Thank you.
the full visual of kilts and her repartee.
It was just so boring. Everyone was flexing. Oh, I'm in the admin chat. I get to do this and blah, blah, blah. You can't talk about anything interesting anyway. Like, seriously, let's be honest here. We're just bitching about everyone else on the internet. Why is this so important to you? And
well, that is true. That okay, we're going to do it a little bit. How much of the conversation on the internet is simply bitching about other people?
Probably 80%. We can Pareto principle that one easily. 80% of it is gossip. Everybody's just bitching about other people.
And it's the guys too, right? They always say that we are the ones who do it. Moo,
No,
right?
moo.
No. It's like how much of it is these internet, fake wrestling battles of who said what to who, and then I'm going to ban you off of my Twitter feed. Oh, are we going there? Are we heading towards Twitter?
We're getting there. Tweet. Well, this is the interesting thing too, because I was very overtly aggressive with pretty much everybody, including some dear friends of mine that I've retained miraculously. Thanks, guys, for putting up with me. But it was fun. I was like, no, I'll just have an all-out Mortal Kombat with you in text, and then we'll get over it the next day, right? These things are not so on the internet.
Well, they're not so in academia anymore. That's what this all started, right? With me saying,
yes,
in the classroom. Yes. I mean, I think of my classroom as a completely safe space for bouts, right? It's the safe space where you can test your ideas.
Yes.
Not where you're protected from hearing anything that you then don't want, you can't cope with because you've never practiced thinking about it.
Well, that was that.
I love your rooster. We're gonna give him a mic, and
he doesn't even need one. So he's just taking the Conch and running with it. Yeah. But that.
He's fine. There's no. He's just talking.
But it's timing. They don't just crow in the morning. He picks the weirdest time. It was this thing of seeing the same mechanism that you were dealing with in academia, and of course you have been saying to everybody you need to practice having difficult theological discussions. Right. Because otherwise everybody gets too sensitive and they explode. This is the atomic myths, if everyone's stuck in relativism, we can't have theological battles. We're very fragile and things just blow up. So I was running around just poking everyone and fighting, because that was my way of saying, okay, well, we're going to de-escalate the bomb by having very, very aggressive interactions in the chat room, and then realizing that actually that's not what people want at all. Right. And then seeing how that was paralleling what was going on with you in the academic environment, that Westerners are actually scared to have a full-on confrontation, even in these so-called safe spaces that have been created for these kinds of confrontations. So
seminars and such. I mean, we're literally, it's like in academia, we're literally meant to be practicing dealing with difficult arguments. And the culture, that all of this started around, it is funny when I was retelling it to get, sort of get us to, we're not yet to the present, you guys realize, that it does feel a very long time ago when this was the framing for what academia was talking about, because to a certain extent, and this is so in the midst of the COVID mandates and masks and so forth, the students at University of Chicago started the Chicago Thinker, and they were, full snaps to they've done it for 2 years now, incredibly courageous reporting to say, we are going to write about these things. We are going to say what even our own peers, and to recognize it's not the professors doing it, it's everyone. You know, it's the administrators and the professors and the students doing it to each other. The professors doing it to the students doing it to the professors. You know, it's like one way or the other, everyone's gotten into this particular cultural mode of alarm, like your rooster.
Yeah. There he is.
I think he's actually having a debate, but that you know, to be more frightened of saying something that other people might not have heard or thought about, or it's all, you know, been and you and I haven't actually talked about that this much because we're bored with it, but it impacts us constantly, the identity questions. Which
you
know, the 3 Cheers for White Men has, you know, and the signal you're not a white supremacist. It's all this in group signaling of, and then it's sort of, to my mind, it's mainly just signaling you're in the group, right? It's like the Telegram chat, everybody wanted to be in the Milo group. The borders of these groups seem not to be defined by actual arguments so much as approve. It's like
membership,
fish, the sort of bird movements or fish schools, or I'm not sure about sheep because they can be led by sheepdogs. But you know, this sort of the group suddenly knows how to turn, and if you don't turn with the group, you're going to get savaged.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. So we're getting into a mode where even if you say, look, I don't want to have this group affiliation right now, I want to look at the issue and solve a problem, people are very nervous by that, because then you're not standing up for a group identity. How dare you? If you're not with us, you're against us. I've seen this a lot with people the last few years since I got involved in the mirror, especially with what I've been talking about, what I was talking about when I was aggressively battling everyone else, because I mean, from my perspective, I've stepped into enemy territory ideologically. I do not represent the right wing or the conservative side of things in the West at all. And I was in there, you know, a kind of one-woman army in many ways, to kind of say to everybody, hold on, this isn't how it's working everywhere else in the world. You need to see it from a different side of things. Precisely because I could see that the group dynamics are beginning to be formed in a particular way, which is not Christian.
Right.
So, and that was very upsetting to everyone. To see me doing it, because of course they assume, well, I'm just fighting for the sake of the fight, instead of realizing maybe it's because I don't like the I don't like the way that the fish and the birds are all being herded together in these giant controllable that are moving for fear of losing their status in the mob, instead of moving for the good and the true and the beautiful. So it's very difficult now to have discussions publicly, because even if you're saying to everybody, I am not in this particular group, it doesn't matter. You get lumped into a group no matter what, which is why I'm quite happy to talk to the people that I talk to, because I think now we all have the same problem, which is we're fighting. Fundamentally, what we're fighting is that the conch fever. It's a delirium that everyone is inside, and if we can't retrain ourselves as Westerners to enter a cell and have a proper bout, or if we can't train ourselves to enter a classroom and fight passionately about something and then leave the room and have it be appropriately assigned to, you know, like a kind of martial arts experience where, oh, you know, what happens in the dojo stays in the dojo, don't worry about that, that was dojo, now we're going out for pizza or whatever. If we can't reclaim this ability, we're not civilized. there's no civilization to save. We're not saving a civilization. We're saving something very different. And um, yeah, I kind of rambled a little bit, but
Well, it's so what I'm thinking is, I'd say, it's like we debate things in my classroom, or you go into the dojo and you fight, but there are rules.
Mhm.
And I do understand that one of the, well, it's like there's spoken and unspoken rules to the way the groups are behaving, but there are
Mm.
also reasons that my version of how we debate things don't fit their version of rules. And what you said, the good, the true, and the
Mm.
beautiful, right? We that whether you go into that dojo and simply say, how to say it, there's games with rules and you've agreed the rules and you're trying for excellence within those rules, which I think is
Mhm.
what the base con people tend to like, right? They like games, right? They're in games,
Yes.
and you set up the structure and you compete within that structure and you acknowledge excellence and
Mhm.
want to. Whereas there's another kind of interaction which I showed this all out in my lobster side little cartoon with toys, right? It's like
Yes.
the boys game or the bears game was an actual game with, it was like rock paper scissors but with dice and lobsters, or
Mm.
I think they're Warhammer figures, I'm not sure. They happen to be around and they fit in
Okay.
the problem, versus a game that's a social game of simply, quote, making sure everybody is included, which has other elements of, like, if you're worrying about whether people are included in the social group, then you end up with the mechanisms of shaming and ostracism as primary for, like, whether you're going
Mm.
along with the feel of the group.
Yeah. But the groups don't make any sense to me.
Mm.
They actually don't make any sense to me. They exist in a kind of amalgamation of people with shared grievances some of the time, but most of the time I can't see the um
Well, that's because they're not, you and I, weird as we are, vampire and professor. Wait, no, you're a pigeon.
mm,
Um,
mm. I put the fangs of wags.
um, we actually, weirdly enough, do operate. I mean, we are women, and yes, we acknowledge that and moo, and we get it. But on the other hand, there is always a spectrum, in this sense that we do like the rule games too, right? It's like, base con was mainly guys. There women, other women there, and I really enjoyed talking with them. And but it's within a context that the men create the game structure. And
Yes. Yes.
women's, that's why the no women in Milo chat on Tuesdays rule was interesting, and that's why we were actually interested in observing. It's like, what do the men talk about when we're not around? How do we change it when we come
Mm-hmm.
in? How is that going to, what kinds of dynamics are going to play out? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
this is not where I was intending to go with this thought, but it is interesting to me that gender studies doesn't deal with this stuff. Right? It's like,
No.
gender studies would be way more interesting if, instead of
Well,
trying to say, everybody should behave like women, they actually considered the way women behave. It's
mhm.
complicated.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and and of course with lots of unspoken rules that if you admit out loud, you can be heading out the door that way from the
Oh yeah.
the social group. That may
Yeah.
have happened in some of the cancellations I've experienced in my life. That had nothing to, which will be a feature of mixed companies, right? If you end up with more women
Mm.
in academia, the whole culture of engagement changes because women play by different rules than men. We do, and if you won't admit that, ladies,
Yeah.
you're still with no. But yeah, the thing is, everybody knows it, right? That's what's so funny about it. It's like literally everybody knows it, because that's why the feminists say the men are toxic. 3 cheers for the men, right? They're playing by different kinds of interactions, and some of us women enjoy those because they're polite to us, and ask them to sit on panels at their conferences and call you with names of respect and recognize your input, as long as you're not trying to then destroy their game.
Yeah, well, when I was a fake man, I had that. I had a lot of the ladies on the internet were trying to stop me doing what I was doing because they didn't understand that I was playing.
Right.
That was my way of problem solving, was to fight people, which seems strange, but it's not strange if you consider it in a different field. You know, it was a contest to problem solve what exactly was going on with the conversations. The women found it really uncomfortable because it wasn't an invitation for consensus,
right,
that sacrificed I wasn't willing to sacrifice my desire to understand who people were and what they really thought just to achieve a group consensus in that space. And
well, what's some of the, I mean, you're being elusive rather than naming names, but I mean, what some of them wanted was, one, your agreement with their group dynamics, so that was what they wanted. And it, you know, it was kind of, the topic was irrelevant, and and then others, there were certain topics that we wanted to explore, primary, you know, fundamental among them, the divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Yes, yes, that was a very interestingly contentious topic. For a chat room that was full of Christians, I found it really interesting that I made so many people feel uncomfortable when I was doing what I was doing, which was just being blunt and directly saying to everybody, it's necessary for the West to embrace the faith, and to say that I was not willing to make any adjustment in my belief for the sake of placating somebody else's, that I was making a truth claim that Christ is God. To deny that means you're denying God himself. So it made everybody feel very, very uncomfortable, which I thought, again, okay, this is interesting. What are we really doing then? Are we looking for truth? Are we willing to proclaim truth in a cultural space? Or are we looking for a consensus to get a group cohesion together? Well, what runs the group cohesion in this case? It goes back to the atomic myths. It's a relativism, right? If we can't make a truth claim, we're back in relative. Everyone gets very touchy. We're back in the atomic. And then I realized that that's probably why I just said reject the conch and I bail, because it doesn't matter to me. I don't have this. I'm not explosive, even though I'm highly assertive, because I know in myself what I truth. I know Christ. So if someone disagrees with me, it's not a problem. I don't want the conch. I don't need the conch. Christ has the conch. He's
right.
He's the Alpha and the Omega. So we have the hierarchy sorted out already. Everything else is just us playing in creation as best we can. But yeah, it was a fascinating reveal that even in environments where you think you're dealing with people of faith and people that are sharing the same faith as you, or the same religion as you, there are other things happening in that space. Personal ambition, the need to save face in front of other people that overrides overrides your faith, which I think is going to link to what our topic was going to be today.
Well, we were supposed to be talking about what happens when you try to get out of being canceled by making a bargain with the devil, but we'll just keep on with this, because I think we're still unpacking to get to the point where people understand why Theophilus is the most important miracle story we have. To be continued. So this is...
We're just going to tease them for weeks, aren't we? It's
I
a
can read
horrible.
about it in my book if
Great.
they want the preview.
It's good.
Okay, so what you were saying there was I think we're getting to it. So we have this because that was my the thing that I got most grief for in academia when I was writing about Milo was saying we should debate theology. I mean,
Mm,
that was the thing that they got most angry about. They wrote my
mm,
colleagues. I mean, there were many colleagues, but there were 7 of them that wrote answers to my blog, my divinity school newsletter post saying, we need to practice debating theology because it really is like at stake for people. And the instantaneous response is she wants everybody to be Christian and she's hateful. And I had said we needed to practice debating. And that was why
mm,
the response to Milo's talks was so important. It was because people were getting fraught about things that they weren't used to being able to talk about. And so I was
mm.
quite literally saying we need to practice this debate. And I got 7 responses, 4 substantive and 3 very brief ones, that they've then published on the news in their newsletter too. For the most part, missing the point. I did a blog post called 7 with 1 blow, where I went through their different answers, and I said, one of the graduate students actually made some good points. So she I don't think she won the bout against me. I think she just got some touches, but the rest of them, they were not talking about what I had raised as the problem. And I realized, now it's like I can't. What you're describing is our atomic myth, this absolute relativism of nothing is. It's all Heisenberg uncertainty, which Hans can explain to me why that's actually not as true as people think it is. That their response to my certainty of being willing to defend a particular claim was to say I was hateful.
I'm just going to say it right now. This is a really interesting case of white fragility. The white people that are scared of having religious conversations. So this is a white people problem. This is not a people of color problem. This is not a
Interesting
problem. This is for whites only.
I think it's specifically for whites, because I think I'm not going to take my 3 Cheers for White Men post down, because at the time that I wrote it, it meant that I was cheering for Christian Europeans.
Well, you know how I use this terminology now. So
we have now, we have now learned from E. Michael Jones to understand that white is, of course, Protestants stripped of their ethnicity, because they're no longer actively Christian for the most part in the mainline Protestant churches in this country. They're not Catholic. Catholics still have ethnicity. So when Catholics become white, it's because they've lost their Catholicism. White is right. It's like this empty category. So of course they're fragile because they have nothing to think with, except what we used to call classical liberalism. Probably. I mean, it's like the Enlightenment obviously is this whitewashing in a bad sense of the absence of any sort of identity other than that which is defined by those pirate codes called Bills of Rights.
Yeah, that trading contract that they drafted. Well, this is the thing. I mean, if you're coming from a place culturally or nationalistically where you've lost identity except for a Darwinistic category, then you can't engage in any kind of theological debate because you have you've got no standing, you've got no ground to walk on. I posted this amazing debate. Here's the example of why I'm saying this, because I know so many people are going to say, oh, she's bashing white people all the time, but this is why. So I posted something years ago and I've reposted it a few times now. It was this amazing debate with this Canadian African American or something. He was talking to a bunch of Ethiopian guys that had just left church. And this guy, David, I think it's David Blaine, he came to Australia not that long ago. He goes around, he's like a Protestant street preacher, and he's got the microphone and whatever. And he's basically pushing Protestantism and especially hammering Ethiopian Orthodoxy because he went to Ethiopia once or twice and just decided that Orthodox people are all hypocrites and therefore the religion is a fake. You know, it's like every list of Protestant insults against Catholics, just like put that in Africa, and this is this guy. So he had a conversation with some Ethiopian Orthodox people in the street, and someone had a phone. They recorded the whole thing. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in terms of Orthodox Catholic versus Protestant, because these are two black guys, right, in America, because they've got the same accent now.
Right.
They're both accented Americans, and they both look the same. And then you see the difficulty in how the Protestant world is given this shocking, this very strong culture shock, because they're not dealing with blacks, they're dealing with Ethiopians, they're dealing with men that have a race, but they're also dealing with people that have an apostolic understanding of history and religion. So this guy is coming in to have this Protestant debate, very nervous in a way, because he knows he's not dealing with people that have just decided to pick up a Bible and make up whatever they think is in there. So it's a 1 hour conversation showing the depth and complexity of the discussions that happen in the old world.
Nice.
Now, for us as people of color, we're connected to the Ethiopians because our church extends all down the Nile. And of course, we're connected to the Greek world, and the Greeks are involved in these debates also. And of course, then we're invoking Syrians because Antioch is involved, and we've got the Syriac Church. And then we're also involving Rome. Why? Because the Roman world was involved in this also. Right. So there's a completely different mentality, because the Mediterranean region extends essentially from Rome to Ethiopia apostolically in this way. And so telling everyone that we shouldn't be having theological debates, well, who's imposing that on us? It's Protestants that are doing it.
Right.
So what you're essentially doing is telling the ancient civilized world not to speak. It would be like saying to that Ethiopian, the group of Ethiopian men that were talking to this Protestant from Canada, you can't be doing this. This is white supremacy. This is hate speech. What? This is how our civilization was formed. It's very normal in Africa to have these kinds of conversations. But beyond that, it really is, it's an imposition of fear that you don't have a theological position to base anything on. Yep. And so you're saying to everyone who wants to have these conversations, no, you can't have them because I can't keep up. Like, you're making everybody around you retarded because you don't want to get in the arena that you know you can't compete in because you don't have a religious base.
Ouch.
And only white people are doing this. Yes, only the white.
This is what's so funny about what I said in that divinity school piece about, you know, it's like Milo had quoted from the founding document of Harvard. Harvard just came out in the FIRE rankings as like the bottom, right? They are the least capable of having any kind of academic freedom right now. That, you know, it was founded as a seminary, which it was, and you know, and I saying that we used to practice these kind of debates, and indeed, I mean, our divinity school, it's not completely absent of Catholics, but yes, it's not really Catholic. It's the University of Chicago Divinity School, and so they were just, I could tell and I was still I was stunned. I'm still kind of stunned to this day. It's like, why did you guys think that it was bad that I was saying we needed to like be debating theology? Isn't that what you do? Isn't that your point? Is it?
What do they do?
Nobody knows.
Sorry, I'm being cheeky now, but
well, I am ramping up to teach this course that I'm teaching on how to read the Gospels, which they don't want to cross list with me because apparently I'm going to teach something about reading the Gospels in the Middle Ages that isn't true. I don't know. I'm going to ask Hildegard of Bingen what she thought about reading the Gospels. Yeah. So, but it's this
They're scared of that polysemous
Oh,
interpretation.
clearly.
It's that dangerous
Dangerous
polysemy.
polysemy. And visionary understanding. And yeah, I mean, we're really going to read, if you guys are, able to sign up for my class, and this I think this will bleed, because these are going to be Thursday classes. Our Wednesday night live streams, I'm clearly going to have this on my mind. So you may be hearing about this more over the next few weeks. But we're going to read things like Origin and the Heliand and Abede and the Heliand and some Rupert of Deutz and Hildegard of Bingen. These are just like all by themselves going to blow your mind, and not fit with even what the scholastics do, because the scholastics get very dialectical and proving questions and things like that. The monastic tradition for the first 1,000 years is woo woo, right? And this is the apostolic tradition. So I like the way you're saying it, saying we can't debate this on the basis of truth. I mean, one of the responses from one of my colleagues in that packet of, Rachel said hateful things. He didn't say I said hateful things, but he tried to moderate it by saying it's not Christianity that we're talking about, it's Christianities, right? There has to be a plural of Christianities, because they're all culturally different somehow. And so there's not even within Christianity, from his description, is there a...
Has he never heard of a capital O Orthodox Christianity?
There's not an actual basis of reality that we're able to talk about. It all has to be this kind of... But of course, there is a basis of reality, which is the sad thing behind all this cancel culture, is that those who do not want to hear us say Jesus Christ is Lord... want us to shut up.
Well, I mean, are you not comfortable with Rabbi Wars? I mean, are you not comfortable with the kind of dialogue that was going on in the Holy Land, in the ancient world, to say that we can't be having these theological debates and then putting it under the umbrella of it's potentially a white supremacy or whatever they're saying. I mean, which people were having Rabbi Wars? Come on. You're imposing other people's ability to do what our people have done for forever. We're being told we can't make a truth claim on who Christ is because of what? Because we're going to use some complicated Greek terms that you don't understand. Okay, well, we'll use them in English, we can just use English words, easy. But it's not about that. It's not the complexity of the terminology. It's that nobody in the modern world wants to see anybody from the modern world make definite truth claim and to state their religion as though they believe themselves that their religion, their particular faith and their particular God is the only one. That's the terrifying thing that nobody wants to witness, which is very strange because you see other people doing it all the time. So why is it that only Christians are not supposed to be doing this?
Well, I do actually have a kind of ironic understanding of how that came about. One, there's the split within Christianity that undermined itself, at least in the West, right, between Protestants and Catholics. And then in the 19th century, when so many of the Anglophone missionaries are going out into sort of culture spaces, we can tie this back around to BaseCon, recognizing a lot of what the sci-fi and sci-fi more than fantasy goes with trying, always encountering other rational beings, right? So you want to have conversations with elves and so forth. Sci-fi is basically anthropology with tech, right? It's like encountering other cultures. And in the conversations that we had, the panels, one of them was about world building. And I'm listening to it and thinking, this is anthropology. It's the desire to create what is a fully functioning culture in this, and realizing this kind of mission. It's a missionary structure for fully appreciating this other, worldview. Now, anthropology comes out of that. I mean, this colleagues. I think maybe they've retired, or I'm not sure they've died. I'm not quite. But in our anthropology department, there was a couple that was working primarily on Africa, and of course, from their perspective, Christianity is bad, evil, and oppressive because they see nothing but Christianity coming. I mean, they're not thinking about Ethiopia coming in and imposing its imperial agenda. So the Christianity gets
they've enmeshed it with the Age of Discovery colonialism and everything,
right? And specifically with the 19th century, when so many of the Protestant missions go out, that they're not usually talking about, you know, Francis Xavier in Goya or in Japan or, you know, in China or something like that, or the Jesuits in Paraguay, like Jones talks about. It's usually from the Protestant, you know.
Yes. So it's an actual racism, because they've denied the entirety of northern and eastern Africa its historical place as being the cradle of Christianity in that region.
Yeah.
It had absolutely nothing to do with Protestants. So they've taken that away. Then this is insane. And then they've said that it's an imperial project. I'm sorry, my brain just exploded.
And that nobody ever actually converted was
nobody converted.
Yeah, nobody converted.
Right.
And that, you know, Christianity is always the. I mean, and it was a long time ago. I was in a seminar with a friend who did Papua New Guinea anthropology. Yeah. She wanted to have a conversation about Christianities, which I know where that language is coming from. They're saying, you know, Christianity taken to all of these different cultures in the world becomes different, right? So New Orleans is different from Boston, I guess. No, I mean they meant it out in the world too, in other parts of the world, but they tended to, usually in our seminars, Christianity seemed to be this kind of black box onto which project all the cool stuff, and Christianity was usually quite, you know, it's monotheistic, right? That's it. I mean, it was usually that level of depth, like it's monotheistic and moralizing, right? You know, nothing of what you and I have tried to talk about this past year here in the Ark of the mythology and the resonances and the art and the complexities of the mythology and the liturgy. And it's like, you know, I talk about most of the kinds of things that they'd be talking about in that context ignored the nearly 2,000 years of missionary activity leading up to the 19th century missions. So they didn't understand that Europe went through all of this already, in terms of how do you talk, how did Augustine of Canterbury talk to the Anglo-Saxons?
No, it's kind of like they've claimed that they've discovered and invented the wheel in the 19th century, ignoring everything prior because they don't want to deal with the complexity of the debates and the arguments and the actual origins of this religion.
Right.
It's purposeful. It's a purposeful misframing of the entire story. To then
and the funniest misframing that I'm starting to notice, and it's in Anglophone literature. So the English, you know, from the perspective of the British Empire, is that you know, Palestine in Roman times was this backwater, this nowhere place. You know, it's like, why would, you know, anybody important, I mean, they lift it from the what good can never come out of Nazareth or Bethlehem or whatever. But, you know, they're projecting their own imperial vision, the maritime one that's centered on London, onto Jerusalem. You know, Jerusalem was the center of world history, frankly. Right. It's like when you're describing all of those crossing paths from Greece to Egypt to Mesopotamia to the Mediterranean, you know, Jerusalem's the crossroads of all of those places. It's the center of the world. But the 19th century comes up with this fiction of it. It's like this backwater, obscure place. It's like you know, it's got so many cross paths because everybody went through there. it's hard to keep it
Yeah, so
you know, David and Solomon get it as a kingdom for a bit, but everybody else is always fighting over who gets to control it.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
oh wait,
It's hotly
continues to
contested
this
real
day.
estate. The world's most hotly contested real estate. It's hilarious.
Backwater. Yeah. That's
Backwater.
hilarious.
Mm,
Watch
yeah.
these slippages, kids.
It's like calling New York a backwater of America, really, isn't it? Because the roads are cracked. Your pavements are cracked, so you're a backwater. Isn't that funny? Well, okay, so it seems like then everybody's followed an imperial narrative and they're not willing to admit it. And yet they have the nerve to say that people like yourself are white supremacists until proven otherwise or until self-declared otherwise. So you're having your own religion and religious identity taken away from you by people that are imposing a British imperialist worldview on the rest of the planet, including us, when we're trying to engage in any kind of public conversation about anything, but especially Christianity.
Yes.
So they are themselves white supremacists.
Yeah, basically.
Right. Okay.
So because modern academic culture develops out of the 19th century, fundamentally, and therefore out of the competitions that are happening in Europe in that academic context, and the United States participates in it, the terms of debate are determined then. And I'm saying
so this is when everybody decided their special rules for being able to talk about all of this stuff.
Right. And just going back to thinking about with this, the sci-fi practice of world building and stuff it's unfortunately, but fantasy does take on this was refreshing at BaseCon because there's a lot of Catholics. We had this whole panel full of Catholics talking about superheroes. So it's a lot of fun, but for the most part, it's challenging to find Christianity. That was another question that came up. It's like challenging to find Christianity actualized within even these fantasy stories. I mean, I say Tolkien does absolutely, but this is a little bit of a side branch. But saying that these genres are so popular, fantasy and sci-fi, to me suggests this intense longing for mythological reality. It's like everybody's participating in it, but within the specific desire for world building, it's always like you're crafting out culture, which we don't feel like we have anymore.
Well, in order to have all of those worlds that people are building in the fictional realm, they have to have self-declared identities that are not subject to being policed in this way. I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of in fantasy, you want to go and talk to the elves. Well, the elves have their own established culture, their own established language, their own territory. They're not going to worry about the opinions of non-elves. They're intra-referential culture. They're not going to care about what people think about their customs and their culture. Does this make sense?
Well, it's sort of relaxing like then, right? I mean, that's what Tolkien invented. This whole culture for as a Catholic, to a certain extent. Yes.
So when you've got the sci-fi anthropologists that want to world build because they want to do anthropology and sci-fi, and they're creating their others, their aliens and their foreigners, well, they're appreciating that there would be a Martian world, a kind of Martian culture, and what that would look like. It's going to be completely different, and it's not going to care at all what the people that are discovering it care about them, think about them, talk about them. So this is interesting. This is a world without cancellation.
Well, that's what I mean. BaseCon was one, it's like the people who like doing this sort of activity and are tired of being canceled by other people in the sci-fi fantasy world, which have canceled a lot of their conversations. I mean, it's like, so that's why the panels come up, although, it's like only one of the one man that was canceled from his publications. He was writing in a game story, I think. I'm guessing these stories come out of this game world, right? So that's a subset of these stories that I'm not familiar with, and I'm, you know, only dimly familiar of things like Worldcon and Comic Con and Dragon Con and the other conventions. But the problem that the unauthorized community is, you know, highly aware of, being the Hugo Awards and the sort of recognition that people are being given within the sci-fi fantasy world. It's pretty much as capricious and vicious as Milo's chat.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of who gets to feel like insiders based on whichever debate has been going on recently.
Mm. Because I have two thoughts on that. So basically, what's happening now is we're all being colonized by Protestantism or neo-Protestants, people that have abandoned Protestantism and have turned to a different form of imposing their worldview on other people, like cancellation as a religious imposition. But yeah, the viciousness over everything. I don't know. It just seems like this is the anti-creative. This is the death of your creativity.
Yep.
You win. It's a Pyrrhic victory. Yeah, you win the war, but like, look around you. You're living in smoking, smoldering ruins. Congratulations. You'll get to keep your status, and you'll get to stay safe and not cancelled. And at what cost? There's nothing really to be not cancelled from at that point. You've got nothing.
So the you know, the ultimate source of the cancellations that we're working with, I mean, I think we've suggested a number. I mean, one is simply social belonging, right? It's the Mean Girls play, Mean Girls game of whether or not you're in or out of the Moo group. We were we were very friendly as cows, Moo.
Great cows.
So that's one level. There's the relativity level, that we're not allowed to have specific truth claims because of science. There's now this we're getting into this theological discomfort with. Obviously one of the reasons I went into the scholarship that I did was because I felt like there was more to Christianity that I hadn't been familiar with growing up. And when I saw those cathedrals in Europe, they were beautiful, and there must be something else behind them than just what I'd learned growing up Presbyterian and, you know, Middle America. So there's that.
I will put it on that level just because I think it's a factor. But when people get too ethnic, everybody gets upset because you're either eccentric, you're not entering the consensus culture of trade and commerce,
right?
Which is deracinate yourself and deny an the ethnic vision of the world to participate in the gray zone of this commercial environment that we're in.
So our vending machine,
Yeah, the vending machine problem.
But it feels like there's something else that people are really scared of.
Breaking the myth that holds everything together.
Which myth is this? Some people get not just canceled socially, but actually fired and put in jail. And of course, we were sitting on a panel, so none of us were in jail.
Well, it depends on the empire. Every empire has its own myth, its own mythology, its own story. So
I mean, we've been talking about that a lot, right? And that came up in my alt history
Mm,
lesson. Which
it
empire
did.
bias is like you and whose empire? Which empire,
Yeah.
whose empire is telling which story right now?
Yeah.
What do empires do with their
They
stories? I did a
they
blog
spread
post. I did a blog post last 2 years ago now on the American Empire, Imperial America. So I was already
Mm,
starting to feel it then and saying, wait a minute, something interesting is going on here. We look
mm.
like Rome in a lot of ways. And it's not just because like we're falling into empire. We've been empire.
Yes.
And Rome, when it was Rome, was the glory of the world. People wrote orations about how great it was
Hmm.
and how homogenized it was, how brilliant it was that the whole world was Roman, and then it fell.
So that didn't work.
Well, it certainly, worked for a while to, recruit people to the
Mm.
legions, which again, everybody's been pointing out.
Hmm.
But it existed a long time. I just like think about what it must have been like in the middle of the empire. And you're here.
Mm.
Actually, our comic artist for Draco Kimka, Seinu no Fraga, did a magnificent illustrated version of a biography of Marcus Aurelius. He's the artist for it, Verissimus. And
Hmm.
one of the things that he shows absolutely brilliantly is all of these border wars that Marcus Aurelius had to involve himself in. And then of course
Yeah.
the Romans in Rome didn't need to be terrifically aware of these border wars because they're out there on the edge, of the empire. They're brutal,
Mm.
and poor Zay had to draw all these like literal sacrifices. There's one of the panels is showing the now I can't remember which group. There were a lot of sacrifices in a lot of different groups because Marcus Aurelius went to battle
Mm.
with all of them. That there's like six cows have all been killed and they're lying there on their sides and the blood's dribbling out, right? And the Germanic chieftain is saying, "Now we will conquer Rome." Well, they did, but not then, right?
Not then.
Oh, that
There was a time delay.
you have to really motivate people to believe that you're the good guys. You are
Hmm.
civilization, and everybody who's attacking you is evil and not civilization.
Yeah, well, I mean, what did Rome do to Gaul? They had a famous invasion where they put hooks on the ground. Gallic soldiers were running over the top of them and having their feet shredded. Then they all got hacked to death. And it's that I remember reading about that particular invasion. The takeover, the Roman takeover of Gaul, even scandalized Romans in the capital.
Mm.
That was one border war which did reach the ears of the civilized in the capital. But of course, you have to think about what happens when empires are expanding and there are all these border wars happening and whatever. They're not going to be reporting on the intricacies of what the empire is doing to expand and to run and to function. It doesn't want to tell the citizen. Most of the citizens don't need to know. Most of the Romans don't really need to know any of this. What do they need to know? They need to know that Rome is the best and that without fail, whatever is happening for the greater good. Presenting them with a narrative that allows them to feel comfortable that no matter what Rome does, it's justified. And I mean, for us, our civilization now. I mean, what do we talk about when we talk about the narrative that allows us to claim an uncontested good guy status, that no matter what this civilization does, we're doing it for the greater good? Well,
Democracy.
yeah, yeah,
Democracy.
yeah. At least we've got democracy.
Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Democracy. It's starting to sound a little thin, isn't it, guys?
Mm-hmm.
I had this terrible moment in, I think it was summer 2020. Trump is at Mount Rushmore giving a talk, and they're rallying, right? And military planes and that proud to be an American song and stuff. And unfortunately, one of our friends in Face at that time on Telegram was teasing me about how bad that country music was, and I was mad and I was crying, and I realized that was the last time I could hear that song without it feeling fake.
Mm. Warp speed changed all of that, I think.
Something it's
COVID
something cracked, right? And suddenly we could start seeing the narrative as a narrative instead of reality. Which I have been thinking about. It's like I do appreciate why people get so anxious when their narratives are challenged. I mean, I've practiced my whole life, and I'd say this is a gift to be in Christianity in the time in the world that we are. It's like we have to think about it all the time as a test. Is it true? Is it true? Is it true? Study the scholarship, test your theology, think about the culture. So we don't get to be comfortably Christian, which is good.
No.
Right? Because we do have to then consider it and choose. See, the rooster agrees with me.
Yes, he does.
And yet I grew up believing the United States was the good guys. You know, but everybody did. I was actually looking this up, saying, I was actually looking at it as like how many people have died in America's wars since World War II, and the first thing you end up seeing is just numbers of Americans killed, and apparently most Americans killed in war were either killed in our Civil War, it's very effective, or in World War II, and for the most part, American military have not died in our wars. I mean, the numbers I was finding is I don't know whether these were accurate, right? But not very many even in the Revolutionary War, right? It's mainly the Civil War, mainly World War II. But what I wanted to know was how many people had died in the wars that America started since World War II. And one number I saw was like 12 million. I'm like, that doesn't feel like enough, right? Horribly enough, a lot more in Korea than I was aware of. And shame and embarrassment. One of my senior recently retired colleagues in my department, Bruce Cummings, has written a lot about Korea. So I guess I need to go read more about Korea now. And the stuff I was finding was citing him and saying, you know, Korea has cause. We bombed apparently 80% of their cities. Gone in 3 years. 1950 to 1953. Maybe that could explain a little bit why North Korea has the position that it does with respect to the rest of the world. Is bombed. It's like something like it was like 80% of their urban development was wiped out in 3 years by U.S. bombs. I mean, every single time we've gone to war, it's been, you know, we're the good guys. Very aware of this because my father was my grandfather was a 2-star Air Force general, and his son, my dad, was there for the reason we were in Albuquerque is because he was doing his residency on the Air Force base, and when he finished his residency in surgery, he was then stationed at Offutt, which is the Strategic Air Command base in Nebraska, and he went from there to Udon, Thailand, to serve in one of our military hospitals during the Vietnam War.
Mm. So he saw the border wars of the empire.
He was there.
He was there. Yep.
I mean, so one of the other interesting things I found in looking up statistics today was during World War II, something like 10 to 12% of the United States population was involved. So much more of the population aware of the war. It's a tiny, tiny number that are actually in the armed forces now.
Yeah.
It's not, we're not terrifically militarized. And of course, most of the military is in the South, so the North always gets to hide its attention to what that means. I think we've talked about this, that what I saw in Apocalypto was a very interesting image, and it wasn't the evil of the Aztec sacrifices, because I don't think that was what that movie was about.
Yeah.
It was the way the politicians convinced the young men to allow themselves to be killed. Because if you don't do this, our crops will fail. If you don't, if and the way the men in the line, I found that some of my Telegram, like the way the men on the line of the scaffold to go on to having their hearts cut out, and they're saying, "Die bravely."
Yeah, the same thing was done to Australia. We had a volunteer participation in volunteer in World War One. I don't think they utilized conscription, but they did utilize a lot of propaganda to get everybody to think that they needed to go.
Yep.
Enormous amounts of propaganda to convince everybody to go and fight in World War One for empire.
That propaganda.
Yep.
And what do empires do when their propaganda is starting to look a bit gimcrack?
Panic. They panic, then they have to figure out another way of keeping the empire together. The story doesn't make it stick together. We've got to figure out another way of making it stick together.
The internet is a delightful place, because recognizing this also came up at BaseCon, right? And I think it was Travis who said it. Travis Corcoran said this. We're living through something as big as the printing press, obviously, but this shattering of. I was thinking about it in the sense of the same way that people in the 16th century had this howl of the clergy has been lying to you. That's basically the internet right now. They're lying. We can see all of the stories and they're lying. And you start, recognizing that the empire can't sustain its propaganda when everybody can check the particulars of things.
Yep. Yes, it becomes very difficult to get people to volunteer to have their hearts cut out when they no longer see a genuine reason, when they don't think that the crops are going to fail if they don't do it.
Right.
How do you get them to cut their hearts out? Because they don't. And empires need armies to work, to function. Empires need armies on the border. They need armies in a border war. Otherwise, they're not an empire.
Right, because the empire is, by definition, domination of other nations.
Yep.
Vox is very good on that, right? It's like the empire means one nation dominating other nations. So you're going to have that force.
Yep.
And you're going to have to mobilize people with a story, because that's how people are mobilized. I mean, it's sort of stunning to me that it's taken me obviously actually this long for it all to go ching 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 ching. Because I've taught for several times a course on war in the Middle Ages, and one of the lectures that I always was particularly struck by is looking at battle orations. Right, there's some good literature on the, yeah, and it's like, here they are, William the Conqueror, in the way the chroniclers talk about how he motivates them all to go, invade England.
Get him.
And he's got the papal banner behind him, because whatever, the English, they're not, all of this, right? It's constantly this, no army goes to war without a speech.
Yep. They need the speech, they need the story, they need the reason to be at war.
And I mean, interestingly, you could say this is a kind of reassuring on the part of human nature. It's like to rouse men to go to war, you need to convince them that their loved ones are under threat.
Yep. Oh, you mean they don't just like running around and hacking people?
Apparently not. They'd actually rather have. So there's the great drama. It's like we started with saying, it's like, do all narratives need conflict? And it's like, well, the great narratives seem to involve war, and make a lot of movies about that, and you convince everyone that you're on the good side and you're the good guys. I mean, the other great narrative is like love stories, right, where you make babies and end up with more people, and then wait, which one do we want? We want more babies with people. Love stories. Let's have love stories. But the motivating, rousing epics, it's not just monster slaying. So I wonder about this. I do wonder about the psychology of, we need the monsters to fight because that makes us valiant. But on the other hand, if what you've done is create this monster to rouse your empire into, dominating other people's markets.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very strange, because if you create the monster, and every empire has a monster.
The Romans had the Persians. They got to fight them every so often, and every so often the Persians would oblige by like cutting Crassus' head off and filling his mouth with gold. That was pretty intense.
What a way to like get back at a gold. Just fill it up. You need the love, you need the romance, because without the people behind them, the men really have nothing to fight for. So you need the family, you need the people, plus the monster.
Yeah.
Well, it's strange now, because the empire that we're living in, it's confused. It has no romance. There's no family creation, because we're encouraging sterility. So young men don't have anything to protect from a monster. And now we've got a problem where we don't even know what the monster is.
They found some aliens in Mexico yesterday. Didn't you see?
Oh, did
Unboxed them and everything. Yes.
They paper mache it. Paper mache.
I mean, they didn't seem very monstrous.
And then everyone said, "Here's an alien." You should smack them a couple of times and see if some candy falls out.
Yes, pinata aliens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and so this fits with our based con, the theme too, because so much sci-fi and fantasy is about, monsters to fight. Right. It's I noticed this when we at the beginning of the weekend on Friday night, we all got to read a little bit of, sample of our storytelling. And of course, from Aurora Borealis, I read the part when the panda gets grabbed by the griffin, and I'm like, wait, I'm doing what everybody's doing. I'm hitting the monster. Yeah. Our monster is, of course, a good monster, but that most of the people's their story selections included the frightening bit where the monster comes and eats you. So here we are. We're always, I get it. Mammoth battles, whatever. Fight the saber-toothed tiger. We do seem to be magnificently motivated by monsters, but war seems to only thrive on insisting that there's the monster, go kill it. Mm-hmm. And it's other human beings.
other human beings, and then ideologies become monsters.
Well, they're useful as monsters because they don't seem like human beings. They seem to possess the human beings that you then kill, and by killing the human beings, they're the monsters. You're killing the monsters. Let's bomb a lot of North Koreans because they're the monsters. Wait.
Yep. Yeah, or invade Vietnam because there's a communist monster roaming around, or, you know, for Australia it was kill the bull.
Mm-hmm.
Kill the bull.
Yep.
Pow. The boys marched off when they were still colonial subjects to go and kill some bulls. Why? Because there was a monster there.
It's pretty interesting that we're able to see that most of these monsters are confected.
Yep.
Think there are any real monsters out there?
Sure.
Well, no, I mean like ones that we've been motivated to go to war against.
Oh, okay. Well, let's think. What are the monsters that we've been motivated to go to war against in the last little while, including our 2 world race wars?
Saddam Hussein.
Yep. Osama bin Laden. He was a pretty tricky monster, very hard to pin down.
Especially since he spent so much time on dialysis.
Yeah. Yeah.
I spent a lot of time watching September 11th discussions the past few days. That was well constructed monster.
Oh yeah, that was a very well coordinated one. Gaddafi, he was another one. A lot of them have turbans, since the 90s.
Because they come from these backwaters, right? Not the center of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all just a desert. It's not the cradle of civilization.
No, just backwaters.
Who else have we had as a monster?
Can't think.
There's a big one.
Darth Vader.
Darth Vader.
Which you'd think there's a kind of big tell in that one, recognizing that they're all descended from him. He's in fact their father.
The ultimate bad guy.
Can't think.
Would he be European by any chance?
Churchill. Wait. No, wait. He's gay. Yeah, I mean, according to the Daily Mail, probably gay.
Franco in Spain.
I'm not sure about him. So I had one of my students who writing Christian poetry talked about how her grandparents were her grandfather was put in prison and her grandmother had to flee because they were Catholic. I'm not sure that was Franco doing that. That's a bit confusing.
Okay.
I'm sure that the communists, they're evil, right? We can just.
Apparently, yes.
Stalin was pretty bad. Wait,
Castro.
Were we allied with him for a bit in World War II?
Yes.
That's confusing.
It is. The alliances change sometimes depending on.
Okay, so I did look up Genghis Khan. Apparently, millions of people died because of Genghis Khan. There's a bad guy. Although we all seem to enjoy that Who song about him.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe it's like you
nationalism of the Khan.
You've murdered according 40 million to 60. They don't even know how many millions of people died in Genghis Khan's expansion, right? But now we get the Who. I can almost hear the song, right? Juve, right? Yeah, I've listened to that way too many times. It's embarrassing. So
That's very
that's kind
funny.
of, it's like and there was also some like Mongolian election music that the Who did for their new guy president. They're riding around in this, it was like a swastika shaped horse
Oh
formation.
yeah.
Do you remember that video? That
Uh-huh.
was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, the Mongolians, they like that symbol.
interesting.
Yeah. I've got a picture on my channel of an old Mongolian aristocrat, a woman in this beautiful outfit. And funnily enough, Star Wars based
Oh yeah.
the queen, what's her face with the white face makeup? Is it Amidala?
I
I
don't
forget the
know.
name. I don't know.
As far as
You
I'm
know, I'm
concerned,
not a
there's only
Star Wars
three.
person.
There's only three movies. I don't know what else you're talking about.
Oh, okay, so it's one of the new ones. All right, good. No, I don't
New
even know what
ones?
that
They're
is.
newer
But they
ones?
based,
Blotted
yeah.
from my memory.
Ugh. Well, they based the costume of this queen in Star Wars off this Mongolian
Yeah,
queen
I do think I saw that
who's
one.
wearing
Yeah.
the same makeup, and then on her dress, funnily enough, lots of swastikas on that dress.
Huh.
But they didn't include that in Star Wars. I think they had to pluck that
Okay, so
off
Genghis Khan is
because they're
clearly the bad guy.
against Asian religious expression or something. I'm not sure. Mongolian traditions are a bit of a hot topic.
Well, it is why people get mad at Tolkien, right? Because the orcs seem to have a kind of Genghis Khan sort of character to them and their relentless ability to slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
Genghis Khan is a good guy anyway, right? Because he's not white.
Is he?
I don't know. I've lost track of all these categories. We're trying. So it's like there's narratives that people are. I mean, Europe was pretty worried about the Mongols, although they were also trying to like ally themselves with the Mongols against Islam at some point, which is why William of Rupert goes to Karakoram to talk to Mongu Khan and has that great religious debate between him and the Buddhist and the Muslim in front of the emperor to the Khan, and the Khan sort of sends them all back home. He's not impressed with any of them. Although the Mongols in Baghdad do actually convert to Islam at some point. I lost track, and then some other ones of them end up. The Golden Horde ends up in Russia, right? So maybe maybe the Ukrainian Russian competition is actually the Mongols versus the. No, wait. So it is interesting how all of these stories of historical conflicts turn into a situation where both sides are vilifying the other with atrocities.
Yep.
And then within the moment of the war, it's considered horrific to admit that your side's doing it too. Like saying that the enemy deserves killing because they're the most evil of evil.
That would break the motivation for your troops, for your border war soldiers to continue doing what they're doing if you start talking about things that are going to demotivate them by pointing out their own horrendous atrocities.
I think we need to stick with the sci-fi monster villains, right? The actual aliens. They're always bugs. Did you notice that?
The insects.
Except for in Nausicaa of the Four Winds or whatever. It's a Japanese, very famous Japanese comic where she's friends with the bugs. For the most part, I've noticed this, right? In sci-fi, it's like Ender's Game, Ender's Game is complicated, or the buggies, right? We're good. We can fight them if they're bugs.
Yeah, they're only bugs. They need to be crushed.
I don't know. I feel like there's something missing, and we're not saying it yet.
Another monster, another historical monster. The Mussolini?
He made the trains run on time and had Time magazine exposés of him in the 30s. I'm teaching Eurociv again this year, and when we do Mussolini, you have to look at how many times he was praised by people like Will Rogers and FDR. So I'm not sure he counts as absolute villain.
Okay. So who is absolutely the most absolute villain of all time?
Satan.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I don't think we're gonna figure this out tonight, but I did do this tweet today saying something along the lines of, like, wouldn't it be wonderful if the people that you've been taught were the most awful of awful? I didn't quite say it that way. It turns out that the things that have been attributed to them didn't happen. That would be interesting.
It would.
I'm sure that never happens. I mean, the Inquisition, for example, right? They killed millions and millions and millions of people, right? The Spanish Inquisition.
Well, that's what the story
killed millions and millions and millions and millions of people.
Yes.
Or only like a few thousand over 350 years. I'm not sure which is true. They kept really good records. And apparently, so according to the records, it was a few thousand people. Fewer people died in the Spanish Inquisition over 350 years than died on September 11th, 2001. Ooh.
Wow.
Wait, so we can't hate the Spanish anymore?
Apparently not.
The Aztecs, that's it. The Aztecs were definitely pretty bad. They did sacrifice mountains and mountains.
People don't worry about the Aztecs, do they?
Well, except for the ones that have been trained by the CIA and are now MS-13. No, wait. Shh. I think I'm a little worried that we're going to learn that the United States has killed millions of people. Would that make us the bad guys? Because no, but we did it for democracy.
Yeah. Apparently.
It's a good thing it worked in Vietnam, since they're communist now. And North Korea has nuclear weapons. That was good. That's good for them. I don't know. This narrative stuff is really challenging.
Well, it's difficult because if
who
you're
has
used to
the conch? I mean, it is interesting that Lord of Flies was in fact a critique of the war itself, right? Not one side or the other.
Yeah. Well, that was the behavior of everybody, wasn't it? It was power. It was the conch.
Yep. It
was pure imperial power. And what do you need to do? You need to make sure everybody stays in that conch frenzy. They have to. They have to be pointing their guns at an enemy that's the most evil, absolutely ever, without any self-criticism whatsoever, or else the guns, they won't stay pointed. They get put down, or they get turned into a different direction. So, Lord of the Flies is about World War II. So what's going on in all of these competing imperial powers during World War II? What monster are they told they need to be rallied to fight?
Well, clearly each other. Wait. Wonder what people are going to do when they find out these stories were a bit different. Fat says 6 million by abortion alone. Well, yes.
In which country?
I think that's the United States.
Mm.
I don't
So
think
we've,
people like feeling like they're the bad guys. I bet there's going to be some more cancellations if we talk about this
oh, definitely.
because we point to people as sinners. People don't like that.
Mm. Well, the empires become idols, don't they?
Yes,
And you cannot criticize the idol.
ironically.
Mm.
Which I just like ironically, all of the cancellations that have been happening over the last 6-10 years have all been around the idols.
Yep.
The same idols. How interesting.
Mm.
And this is I think an interesting thought to bring into this. How do we stop it?
The cancellation? Hmm. That's a good question. I first came to experience the cancellation conch fever,
Mm,
uh, returning from Africa and talking to people here. You know, after they caught the fever,
mm.
they caught the conch fever, and then putting my foot in my mouth by saying that it was African nationalists that were the original anti-fascists.
And what happened?
That in fact running around and calling everyone, including me, a fascist was weird. Because it was African nationalists which were the original anti-fascists. In fact, the Orthodox people of Africa were profoundly anti-fascist and also anti-Nazi. What happened to me when I said this? I got cancelled. I got deplatformed from my entire social circle at the time.
Really? Wow.
Mm. Yes. Yeah.
But why? Because you were saying people were fighting fascism?
Um,
But that's good, right? To
I
fight
mean,
fascism.
I'm like, well, apparently we're supposed to be fighting fascism. So it didn't make any sense to me why I was cancelled for saying this until later. It took me a long time to figure it out. I was saying something contrary to the narrative.
Of the good guy, who's the good guys and who's the bad guys?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I'm so tying this into where we started with the kinds of cancellations that I was getting at the beginning, saying, that the University of Chicago was going to be a place where we could talk about things that were difficult and no space to trigger warnings and stuff. I do. I mean, obviously, you guys, we know where we're going on this, but we need to help you all think it through. Or maybe not tonight. That like why people are explosive right now is because as we've been watching, the American empire is losing its threat ability on the rest of the world,
Yes.
quite bluntly. I was horrified. I
Yes.
was actually horrified to find out how I, how did I not know how extensive the bombing in North Korea had been until today? That's bad. That I was aware of what happened in Vietnam. I've been aware of the degree to which the United States has carried on these border wars of our maritime empire during my lifetime. I am ashamed right now to realize what we've been doing. I mean, I've been ashamed for some time, but this was shameful to read and to recognize how truly the United States had been doing this with these excuses for longer than I've been alive. I mean, I am moderately proud of the fact that back in the day when MoveOn.org was protesting Mr. Bush's war, I did support them then. I still get text from them now for other things. Get rid of Trump. And I'm like, Trump didn't start wars. I think you're missing the.
Yeah.
I think, and this is what's been interesting. Is like how people who were against the war in Iraq are now for the people who are prosecuting
Yes.
the same style of war in another context. It's like, it's interesting how hard it is to stay focused so that you don't get caught in the next narrative. Empires are very slippery this way, right? To being able to recalibrate and direct the hate, like just like in 1984, right? Oh, we were always at war with Oceania. No, now we're at war with Eurasia. No, now we're at war with who knows. But always that direction of the hate, right? Make sure you must be hating what the empire tells you.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that's what I realized I was, it was Mr. Trump's rally, but realizing that's what I was seeing. It's like those planes flying over Mount Rushmore. Can't see in the same way anymore.
Well,
and it's interesting that all this cancel culture stuff started back in 2015. Or it's like, okay, so we did the color revolution in 2014, which my colleague John Mearsheimer has talked about. It's like it's been happening all along. It's like and I realize now we are in the breakup of this particular narrative, and so it's like we've been living through all of these fractures. So that all of the cancellation culture, it's like hysteria around that feeling of we've known we weren't the good guys for some time, but now everybody is kind of aware of it, and then casting around saying, but then who is? We don't know. We know it's Christ. But
absolute panic.
Utter panic.
Realizing that, yeah, I mean, it's absolute panic, because if you're realizing that your empire wasn't the good guy, then suddenly you're scrambling to find someone to blame. Well, who was it that made it not good? Who are the ones that are responsible for this horrendous empire that's been running around and doing what it's doing? And then there's this mad clamber for finding the scapegoats, finding the people that you can place a burden of imperial crimes on. and then you get the cancel culture, because of course no one can deal with the magnitude of imperial crime that we would need to realize without scapegoating. All the canceled people are just little scapegoats for this, because the imperial crimes are too much for most people to handle.
That's it.
Yep. So you say the wrong thing, even though it's perfectly logical, like what I said with the African nationalists were the original anti-fascists. This is correct. This is the beginning of World War II, before it had been formally declared, when fascist Italy invaded the imperial Ethiopia. And they used chemical weapons against them. Gas, in fact, to genocide the Ethiopians. But this is never discussed in the narrative of the Western powers. I find very, very interesting that it was chemical warfare there against a Christian country, an ancient Christian country, an ancient Hebrew Christian country. Never discussed when it comes to World War II. But the outcome was interesting also, that after World War II finished, many Italians that had fought on the fascist side were invited to stay in the country, because the emperor specifically invited them to stay and told the Ethiopians to extend mercy that Christ had extended to us, spirit of tolerance for our enemies and forgiveness, where we were able to make truce and make peace. So many of the former fascist soldiers ended up marrying the Ethiopians that they were fighting against and having children with them. I think this is a very, very beautiful thing to kind of look at, and only an alt history approach to that war would be able to show these kinds of things, because the West is not interested in these stories. The West wanted perpetual warfare. The West got stuck in World War II that it never got out of. The American empire running on perpetual warfare, and the Ethiopian story was completely forgotten.
Say it again, how they got out. Through Christ.
How the Ethiopians got out.
Through Christ.
Through Christ. Yes.
through Christ,
Yeah.
which explains why every time we say we need to look at Christ, the empire gets mad.
Mm. Yeah.
It's that simple.
Mm.
This is what I was thinking. It's like, what's the way out? It's Christ. Christ is the
Yeah.
one at the center of the story, the one who defeats the Roman Empire and its tyranny and brutality.
Yes.
The one who will defeat our empire and our tyranny and brutality. It's only Christ.
Mm.
And that, yes, that is why when we say it out loud, the forces of empire rage at us.
Mm.
We must stay in Christ.
Politics dissolves at the altar.
Under the cross.
Mm. Yep.
I think we stop there for now.
Okay.
We're going to continue to teach. One day we'll tell you about Theophilus, but not until we get to there. Yeah. No, I think this is hopefully instructive for what's coming, because it's still going to come. We haven't, here in the Mosaic Ark, but also I think in our culture, we haven't unpeeled all the layers yet. And there's going to be more trauma exposed. And, you know, the more we, it's like the playing with it tonight, saying, look, we've been through all of these layers. Can you even remember any of them anymore? And the academic freedom wars and the COVID wars and the social media wars and it's all Conch wars.
Yep.
And we are, I do keep, it's like, this was my thought when I was on this cancel panel. And it's like, okay, why do I keep ending up in these? Why is there another one? What's the next layer, onion like that's going to hit? And I certainly did not know that in 2015 with 3 Cheers for White Men, that I would still be in this cancel, frame, right? And indeed, it's not been, it's never been the same from year to year. That each time it turns into a new battle that clearly somehow is the same still, but doesn't look the same from year to year. Doesn't the boogeymen seem to shift, the players are changing, the sort of thing that I've said that I've talked about enough over here is not an answer to that one over there. And what I've been meditating on is it's like it is the way Vox and EMJ have been talking. It's like we're watching the collapse of our empire, and it's in this kind of its own horror of recognizing that nothing's fixed anymore. All of the rules that it thought it was going to continue to be able to live by are failing.
Yeah, the social game. The rules are being stripped out of the social game now. The social game of the empire. The myths that kept everything running are dissolving.
Right.
And it's not being replaced with anything. So what is happening with the cancellation is this tribal scapegoating that's happening, where everybody can feel the tension and the terror of having a mythological collapse and having all the rules dissolved, and they have to find someone to blame. They have to find someone to place the responsibility of the chaos on. And that's what we're all living in, because if you say the wrong thing about anything, who knows what it is? You're playing Minesweeper. bang, you land on the wrong square, and suddenly you're responsible for everything that ever happened that's wrong with Western
Right.
civilization.
All of it.
Yeah, exactly, all of it. There's no peace. It's all or nothing now. That's the tension that we're living under.
Oh man.
It's intense.
It really
It's intense.
is. It is.
Yeah,
And this
yeah.
day to day, today, today, what is it going to be next?
Mm,
Oh.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
here's the answer. Refuse the conch. But we do have to take responsibility for care. Oh, it's like, but make art. How's that? We do have to continue to cultivate. And I say, like, culture means worship, right? We have to be in right worship.
mm,
Otherwise, we're going to go crazy.
mm, mm, yeah. Well, if you see your empire as sacred, then you're going to go insane when the empire dissolves. If you can tell the difference between the sacred and the profane things, and you see an empire as a profane thing, then you won't go insane when it dissolves because the sacred things will remain.
That's well said. Let's stop there.
Okay.
You guys, stick with us. We're going to keep working on this one to help you get through the horror, because we know it's still coming.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.